Stop the world!
Welcome to Stop the World, the ASPI podcast. I'm Olivia Nelson, and today I'm joined by a very special guest host, Justin Bassey. Thank you for joining me, Justin. Dave has abandoned me to take a holiday this week.
That's right, Liv. It is a pleasure to be here with you. And Dave actually delayed his holiday to be able to record this podcast, given the importance of the topic and the expertise of the interviewee. But there's no doubt that he was looking forward to getting out of Canberra and going straight to the Sunshine Coast.
A wise decision. But we are still here and we have a real treat for our Stop the World listeners this week.
That's right, Liv. We're joined by Sir Stephen Lovegrove, the UK Prime Minister's Special Representative on AUKUS. He joined me, first of all, at ASPI for a fireside chat, before then joining Dave in the podcast room for a follow-on conversation to do with all things AUKUS.
He was very generous with his time and also very forthcoming. It's easy to deflect questions in these sorts of roles, but Sir Stephen is pretty frank for a public servant in a role that has political sensitivities and also high stakes for all three AUKUS partners.
Yes, he was actually there at the birth of AUKUS in September 2021, initially as the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Defence and then as Boris Johnson's National Security Advisor. So he really does know this initiative down to its DNA, why it was important then, why it's important now, and that really comes through with his commentary.
Yes, we got some insights into his own review for the UK government, his perspectives on the US review being carried out by the Pentagon, and what might be described as a confidence but not complacency that AUKUS is on a good track, provided it gets the attention and nurturing that it deserves. This is, after all, as Sir Stephen says, the most monumental strategic partnership in decades.
It really is actually an illuminating conversation on Stop the World this week, both for its frankness, but also its resolve that we can do this with the right commitment. And that's an important message, as achieving the three nations' AUKUS objectives will go a long way to achieving our respective and collective security needs. So please listen carefully, and we hope you enjoy the conversation.
Welcome back to Stop the World. I'm here with Sir Stephen Lovegrove. Sir Stephen, thanks for coming on.
Not at all. Great to be here.
So you were National Security Advisor to the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson when AUKUS was conceived and delivered. Pardon the midwifery terminology, but that's one way to put it. There was a declared strategic logic at the time that was compelling. Nearly 4 years have passed since then, and a week is a long term in geopolitics right now, let alone a year. Has the strategic logic become more compelling in that time, and what do you see as the major sort of trend lines to explain that?
I think it probably has become more compelling in that time. It's the same strategic logic. It's about the fact that the world is considerably more perilous than it was before, that great power competition is back, resource competition is back. It is important to be able to hold our adversaries at risk. That is increasingly difficult to do in a broadly transparent world. And the most survivable platform that can do that is the nuclear-powered submarine. I mean, that's a nuclear-powered submarine as opposed to nuclear-armed submarine. The fact that as a result of AUKUS, there will be more of these incredibly potent platforms being sailed around the world in areas that it is incredibly important for all nations to remain free and open, is something that we were trying to achieve with the initiative, and is as important now as it ever was. As I say, I think it is probably now the need for that is exactly the same, although the degree is probably even more acute.
Okay. I mean, one of the big developments, of course, that hadn't happened yet in September 2021, when it was originally announced, is Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And I suppose over, in the years that have followed, just the degree of peril that Russia poses to the rest of Europe. You have talked about the indivisibility of the Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific realms. You've made references to the importance of all of these areas to countries, including the United Kingdom. Is it not the case that, irrespective of how useful, how valuable AUKUS is to the United Kingdom, and you have, you've talked about that as well, the Indo-Pacific focus, you will get more better boats out of AUKUS than you would have got out of your submarine program previously. But nonetheless, is it as, it's not quite an existential, the Indo-Pacific isn't quite as existential an issue to the UK, especially given the amount of risk that Russia currently poses. Has that not changed the dynamic at all for the UK?
At its heart, no. I don't think it has. There are a variety of reasons why I say that. And even if it was, by the way, I think that the AUKUS program allows us to deal with that particular threat more effectively than we would have done before. We are a trading nation in the UK. We completely rely on free and open trade routes. Huge amounts of commerce goes through the Asia Pacific, the Indian Ocean. These are areas where the Australian boats and the American Virginia class, by and large, will be patrolling, and we are deeply grateful for that, and we require that for national safety to continue. So I'm not sort of kind of overly changing my view about the importance of that as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia's, just turning to Russia, Russia's aggression is clearly of very considerable concern to everybody in Europe. It should be of very considerable concern to everybody on the globe. They pose a very uncomfortable challenge to what I would call the sort of kind of political West. This is clearly driven by issues to do with national self-determination and national cultural issues, which I think are very far away from being sort of kind of economically rational. They have ended up with a number of, not alliances, but partnerships with countries which wish us all ill and are, posing a significant danger right across the piece. So I think, nothing that has happened subsequently has changed the fundamental assessment. It has complicated some of these things, but it hasn't changed the fundamental assessment. The other thing that I would just say, and you mentioned it, the fact of Pillar 1 of AUKUS, which is about the nuclear-powered submarines, will mean that in the UK's principal area of operation, which is the Euro-Atlantic, we will be getting more and better equipped and more capable boats to be able to deal with the threat in the Euro-Atlantic, which is at the moment principally a Russian one. With the melting of the ice caps in the Arctic, who knows what other hostile vessels will be sailed in the Atlantic in the future.
Okay. I just want to talk about progress across both of the pillars. Pillar 1, first of all, is progress overall across the three partners satisfactory? Where are we doing well, and where do you think we need to pick things up?
I think satisfactory is probably a reasonable assessment. We have made in the UK pretty significant commitments to the investments that we need up in the northwest of the country in Barrow. The plant that Rolls-Royce runs in Derby, which will be providing the nuclear propulsion plants for the Australian boats, all of that investment has pretty much gone in now, and we're very pleased with the progress there. The plans are definitely coming together. I don't think in a program as big as this that you can ever take your eye off the ball, though. Things go wrong. We had a fire, which was reasonably well reported up in Barrow, that actually is not going to provide or create a sort of kind of enormous amount of delay. But unless it was dealt with properly, it might have done. So this is going to be a question of security being a function of sort of constant vigilance. In the States, they're going through their own review at the moment. I think the principal focus of that is going to be the efficiency and productivity of the submarine industrial base. It's been widely reported that they're not producing Virginias at the rate in which they would like. I think that's their version of what we are doing. So we are all working hell for leather to be able to make this as effective a program as possible. It is not going to be one of those efforts which we can sort of suddenly turn off and decide that it's job done, though.
And are you able to comment on Australia and the progress that it has made?
The progress in Perth, which is, I think, the principal focus at the minute, because that's obviously where the Virginias will be coming to berth, is going pretty well, as far as I can see. Certainly on the most critical elements of the Perth build-out. There are the odd things which are sort of kind of not moving quite as fast, and indeed, I did a review. There is a review going on in the Pentagon at the moment, and of course, there's been a review in Australia as well. And I think that's probably sort of kind of identified areas where things will need to move faster. But that's the point of these things. These are very big programs. They need constant attention, and they're going to have to be veering and hauling as we go through.
Let's stay on the Virginias just for a moment. I mean, they're currently at, I forget the exact figures, and it changes a little depending on where you read it, but something like 1.5, and they've got to get to 2.3. But it's a significant gap that they need to make up, and that requires a huge effort. I suppose, I mean, how convinced are you that they can actually get there? And what would be the knock-on effects in your mind if they can't deliver the 3 to 5 boats that important step 2 in the optimal pathway?
Well, I think the two things are not necessarily linked. I mean, let's be clear.
They might be for Australia, though.
Well, they might not.
Okay.
However, to take the two questions
Sure.
In order, I would never bet against the American ability to do very, very difficult things if they really put their mind to it. They are very frustrated, as we know, that they're not producing the Virginias at the speed that they would like to. There are definitely signs that they are moving in the right direction in that area. Part of the answer to it are the investments that not only they are making, but Australia is making in the American submarine industrial base. So I feel it's not going to be a sort of an easy lift by any stretch of the imagination, but as I say, I wouldn't bet against them. I think, as I say, it is not a given that by any stretch of the imagination that there is a specific number of Virginias that needs to be produced in America, which will therefore trigger the successful transfer of Virginias to Australia. I mean, that is a decision that needs to be made. It is not. There is no automaticity about it. And the American interlocutors that I have spoken to are all very clear about the strategic criticality of AUKUS and the importance of Australia being able to field a fleet of SSNs, which are going to increase the security of the region, and B, to provide the kind of berthing and sustainment facilities in Western Australia which provides an enormous uplift, not merely in terms of sort of kind of power projection into the area for America, but also a very significant improvement in the ability of the Americans to keep their existing fleet of Virginias at sea in greater quantities, because the maintenance facilities are just increased as a result.
Okay. So I suppose, two quick follow-up questions and two different ways of looking at it. To be fair, perhaps I should be putting these to the Australian Defence Minister, but the two questions that I can see is, one, we actually just have the capability continuity that Australia needs, and the Virginias are part of that. But also, it seems to be a fairly indispensable stepping stone between, currently operating a conventional fleet of boats to eventually operating the AUKUS SSN. Just to be clear, when you said before that it might not be a problem, do you think it's plausible that we could actually plug that step 2 with some other capability if there is a problem with the Virginias, but the AUKUS SSN is on track, and that would be a sort of satisfactory replacement step 2 in the optimal pathway? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think that there are a variety of different potential capabilities that could fill part of that gap. I think, though, that it's important that, and I'm sure all of your listeners and viewers understand this, that there is no real platform or substitute for a conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarine. They are, by some margin, the most potent platform that we have for both deterrence and, if needs be, combat. And all of our focus needs to be on making sure that the production, infrastructure investment, national will is directed towards making sure that the optimal pathway is fulfilled.
Okay. Pillar 2. Now you've just made some remarks here at ASPI about progress on Pillar 2. You mentioned that there are some areas where you would hope there would be, I forget the exact words you used, but some projects up and running perhaps. And I think you made a reference to a view that perhaps a fewer number of projects, or perhaps a fewer number of capability areas should be concentrated on. Can you expand on that a little bit? Are there particular areas such as, AI or autonomy or something like that you think that we should collectively direct our efforts to, and I suppose save ourselves the effort on some other areas that mightn't be as promising?
Well, I definitely think that we need to prioritise. Clearly, everybody knows that if you've got a list of sort of kind of 120, you are going to find yourselves in difficulty, because these are complicated areas and they're expensive areas and they're difficult to manage areas. So we are not going to be successful unless we radically reduce the number of projects that at 3 we are concentrating on. That does not mean to say that if the number is 120, those are not all worth doing, but it's a question of what are the right ones to do between the UK, Australia, and the United States. And so we need to, because joint collaboration is not straightforward, and we need to not make our life sort of kind of harder than it needs to be. So we definitely need to neck down to a smaller number of projects. And that is happening at the moment. I'm not really in a position to be able to tell you which ones those are. Partly because I'm not in a position to be able to tell you which ones those are for reasons of classification, but partly because the final decisions have not been made. But the general principle of sort of doing so is there. I think I can say without any real risk to my level of clearance that definitely autonomy is going to be a very big part of this. And for my money, the more that we can make some of these priority areas naturally linked to the kind of capability that the Pillar 1 efforts with the SSNs are providing, the better it will be, just because I think there's a degree of consanguinity which I think is useful. But I think autonomy is a reasonably safe bet to say that we'll be having that pretty much front and centre.
Okay, and is that because of the enormous progress being made in artificial intelligence generally across the board?
I think it's a whole host of different things, really. Autonomy is no longer clearly merely a function of just sort of setting something off which is uncrewed. The ability to control it and for it to control itself as a result of advances in AI are clearly very, very important. And we are seeing both in the Middle East and in Ukraine on a sort of daily basis how fast these things are moving. But it's worth thinking about the kinds of platforms that we sort of in the political West sort of operate from. They are fifth and sixth generation aircraft, which are clearly not merely fighter jets anymore or bombers. They are systems of weapons and platforms which are with a central hub which controls them. And clearly, likewise, underneath the waves, there are very many opportunities for autonomous vehicles to make a difference as well. So there's a whole lot of different things which are going on here, but all of them are pointing towards, I think, autonomy as being a very, very big part of the future. Right.
Okay. Interesting. You have two quick follow-ups on that. Then you have indicated that there has been some progress in the last, or things have improved basically in recent times. Can you expand on that at all and explain what it is that's improved and why? And does that portend potentially some actual capabilities being, brought forward to the point of being put in the field in the near future?
Yeah. First of all, I think the stock takes are important. As I said earlier on, I think it's right and proper that new governments, when they're thinking about things which are as big and important as AUKUS, have a look at them and see whether or not they're on track and achieving the kinds of ambitions and objectives that they were set out to do. I think partly, certainly nothing, not entirely, but partly the reviews that I've done, Dennis Richardson has done, are going on at the moment in the States, are leading to people saying, right, okay, let's make sure that we are sort of, concentrating on the things that matter. And I think that has made a difference. It is certainly the case that a focus has been on not something which is going to be potentially deployable in, 15 years' time, but actually can get into the hands of people who are going to be able to use it in the field much, much sooner than that. Certainly, potentially in the next year or so.
Okay. The review by Aldridge Colby, are you worried? Are you completely confident that will not recommend that the United States step back or step away from AUKUS?
I see no reason to believe that that will be the outcome of the review by the Pentagon. I do think that the AUKUS set of programs and the initiative as a whole is a very significant improvement in the security position of all three countries. And I haven't heard anybody say otherwise. I have no doubt that there will be improvements and adjustments which are potentially suggested, as there were by me, as there were by Dennis. But I would be very confident that AUKUS will survive for the future under all circumstances.
Okay. We're on a very tight time frame, so this might have to be the last one. There's been quite a bit of a combination of speculation, but also some anonymously sourced commentary, but enough of it to make you think that there's something there. that one of the misgivings that the US has about Pillar 1 with respect to Australia is that it can't guarantee that Australia will participate in future operations or deployments that would be in that the US would be and that it would expect Australia to be. I mean, most obviously some kind of conflict arising from Taiwan. That, I mean, it seems a strange position for Australia to be in, given it would be a very unusual, alliance or no, that a country and a government, I suppose, ex ante agrees or confirms that it will take part in some hypothetical future deployment. I suppose. I mean, do you have any reflections on that? And perhaps to look at it from the point of the UK, has the UK ever found itself expected, because of the nuclear technology sharing arrangement, that it would take part in US operations as part of that agreement?
No, it hasn't. I mean, that is not to say that there haven't been moments at which the US has wanted to see the support of the UK in conflicts that it finds itself in. But I have never seen, in my experience, or seen any evidence in before my time, as it were, of the nuclear collaboration agreements playing any part in that whatsoever. So, I mean, Harold Wilson famously did not join in the Vietnam War. Of course, the Australians did. I know that it made absolutely no difference whatsoever to the nature of nuclear collaboration, both on the weapons side, which is important for us, not important for you, or on the propulsion side. So I think this is a bit of a red herring, if I'm honest.
Okay, all right, that's good to hear. All right, Sir Stephen, thanks so much for joining us.
Not at all. It's been a great pleasure to talking.
Thanks for listening to Stop the World. That's all we have time for, folks, but we'll be back with another episode next week. For more from Sir Stephen Lovegrove and on AUKUS, head over to the Aspie Canberra YouTube channel to watch his fireside chat with Justin.